Hi everyone. My name is Caroline Pantzer, and I am in 10th grade at the Trinity School, which is a high school on the Upper West Side. I have been taking Latin for 5 years, and I began taking Greek this year. I've always loved taking Latin and have constantly felt a genuine interest in both the language and the class. I think that this special opportunity should be open to a wider variety of people, namely those who don't attend private schools. I'm here today to talk about this dead language's lasting impact on our modern languages and society and why everyone should have a chance to learn it. I would like to start with an activity to show how prevalent Latin's vocabulary and roots are in our modern languages today. If you speak Spanish, French, Italian, Portuguese, or even just English, pause the video and see if you can think of any derivatives in these languages. We can see how these languages are extremely similar, and even though there might be some odd ones out, we can still see how Latin is everywhere and is at the center of one of the most important things, that being communication and linguistics. This is the Greek alphabet, and to many of you, I'm sure these letters do look unfamiliar, but maybe some will catch your eye as we commonly use Greek letters for different symbols and representations today. First off, just by looking at the names of the first two letters, alpha and beta, this is where we get our very word for alphabet in English. Also, among many other languages, English gets their vowels from the Greek alphabet. Alpha, we get A, epsilon, we get E, iota, we get I, omicron, we get O, and upsilon, we get U. Also, if you ever wondered where we get the silent P sound in something like psychologist, it comes from the Greek letter psi, which is right here. And if you ever wondered where we get the F sound coming from PH in something like phone, it comes from the Greek letter phi, which is right here. So, in addition to these letters and sounds we get from Greek, in math and science, we tend to use Greek lowercase letters. For example, in math, we use the constant pi, which is right here, to represent the ratio of a circle's circumference to its diameter, and we use the letter theta, which is right here, to represent different angle measurements. In science, we use the letter mu, which is right here, sometimes to represent a coefficient or a prefix multiplier. Additionally, in colleges, if you've ever heard of Greek life, uppercase Greek letters are used for the names of social residential groups called sororities and fraternities to this day. Also, something that is very fitting to the time we're in today, all of the Greek letters are associated with different COVID variants, and I'm sure all of you recognize the letters Delta and Omicron, which are the names of the variants that were very prevalent and contagious. Apart from using references from the alphabet every day, you also speak Latin, and many conventional phrases or sayings that we use today have Latin references, or in fact, we have kept the words and we still say them in Latin. For those of you who didn't complete your undergraduate in this country, you may be surprised that many educational titles are derived from Latin, and we actually have kept the Latin words. Specifically, the awards cum laude, magna cum laude, and summa cum laude, meaning with praise, with great praise, and with the greatest praise. Also, the term alma mater today is used to identify the university, college, or school someone formerly attended and graduated from. The name Phi Beta Kappa is formed by 3 Greek letters and is an honorary society within a college or university where people are elected to be a part of it based on their high academic achievement. The Latin phrase carpe diem, which I'm sure all of you have heard of, means seize the day and has become part of our regular vocabulary, along with the phrase status quo, which means existing circumstance or situation. Additionally, the commonly used acronyms such as e.g., etc., or i.e., all come directly from Latin. E.g. means exempli gratia, which idiomatically means for example in Latin and was used in a similar sentence structure. etc. means et cetera in Latin, which literally translates to and others or and the rest. IE stands for id est in Latin, which means that is, in the sense that it was used to introduce something that was previously alluded to or needs to be restated. Also, the saying, "Don't fly too close to the sun," comes from the myth of Daedalus and Icarus, which is in Book 8 of Ovid's Metamorphoses, and is about a boy who made wings out of wax and feathers and flew too close to the sun, and the wax melted and he fell in the ocean. We still use this saying today. We also use the term Achilles' heel, which is a reference that dates back to the oldest story of Western literature, which is in the Iliad, being the Greek story of Achilles, who was dipped in a river to immortalize him, and when doing so, was held by his ankle, so it didn't immortalize him there, and when he fought in the Trojan War, he got shot in the ankle and died. So today, when we reference it and say that something is your Achilles' heel, it means that it is your weakness. And we actually have a tendon in the back of our heel called an Achilles tendon. In fact, anyone who studies medicine, many of our biological and medical terms come from Latin. Every part of our body, including our Achilles tendon, and also our names for species, come from Latin and Greek. For example, Homo sapiens means wise man. Homo means man in Latin, and sapiens means wise. While we're on the topic of nomenclature, or the naming of things, in your day-to-day lives when taking the subway, I'm sure some of you have noticed the new technology to pay. It is called omni. This word comes directly from Latin, as the adjective omnis omne means all. So here we can see how omni is very suiting for the name, as it accepts all different types of payments to go on the subway. It is interesting that they chose this name in Latin, yet when we see this when going on the subway, we may not think twice about what it means. Latin-based linguistic patterns are encompassed in our vocabulary used today, whether we know it or not. We have derivatives from this adjective in English, such as omnipresent, omniscient, and omnivorous. Similarly, a great example of this is J.K. Rowling's famous Harry Potter series, which I'm sure all of you have seen, read, or heard of. Rowling's names for both spells and characters are so clever. Rowling is able to exploit a subconscious linguistic pattern that we already hold through the immersion with Latin roots. In other words, Rowling picks Latin words as names that have roots in English to make these readers or movie watchers know what she might be referencing. The wand lighting spell lumos comes from the Latin word for light being lumen. Rowling chooses to use this word with its very common derivatives in English so that the audience can understand the spell or have an inclination of what it is about. So we can see illuminate, luminescent, and luminary. Similarly, the disappearing spell, which is evanesco, literally means to vanish in Latin. Here, Rowling also uses a Latin word that gives us a hint of what this spell might be for. So we can see in English we have the words vanish, vanquish, and evanescent. So when someone hits the spell evanesco, we might know that it means to vanish. In terms of names, Severus Snape's personality is slightly cold and bitter, while Severus means severe or serious in Latin, so his name is pretty fitting to his personality. We can see in English the derivatives being severe or severity. Also, Draco Malfoy's name, who is known to be cruel, entitled, and mean, comes from Latin. Draco translates to dragon and actually comes from the ancient Greek word drakon, and Malfoy comes from malus, which means bad or evil in Latin. So we have the English derivatives malicious, malignant, malintent, and malfunction. Finally, in terms of Latin mottos, the Hogwarts school motto is Draco dormiens numquam titilandus. Pause the video to see if you can figure out what this might mean in Latin. This motto directly translates to never tickle a sleeping dragon. We can see how the word order is not directly parallel to the way we translate it in English, which is actually similar to the order of many Romantic languages. Another example of nomenclature is with constellations and planets. Besides Earth, all of the planets in our solar system are named after Greek and Roman gods and goddesses. We also see Roman and Greek references in constellations and zodiac signs. Mercury, also known as Hermes, is named after the Roman god of travel. This planet is named after the messenger god because it moves quickly across the sky. Venus, also known as Aphrodite, is named after the Roman goddess of love and beauty. We also use the astronomical symbol for Venus to represent the female gender. Mars, also known as Ares, is named after the Roman god of war. It is interesting that Mars is red because we sometimes associate the color red with war. We also use the astronomical symbol for Mars to signify the male gender. Jupiter, also known as Zeus, is named after the king of the Olympians because besides the moon, it is the brightest thing in the night sky. Saturn is named after the Roman god of agriculture. Uranus is named after the ancient Greek king of the gods. Neptune, also known as Poseidon, is named after the Roman god of the sea since it is blue like the sea. Finally, Pluto, also known as Hades, is named after the Roman god of the underworld. It is interesting that Pluto is the odd one out among the planets, as in 2006, it was redefined as a dwarf planet. Similarly, Hades is the odd one out among the Olympian gods, being the only one who does not reside on Mount Olympus. Also, 48 out of our 88 constellations were founded by a Greek astronomer, and the names of the majority of these constellations come from Greek and Romans. For example, the Canis Major is a constellation in the southern sky, and the name Canis Major literally means the greater dog, which is exactly what it looks like. Our English word canine comes from canis. French and Italian also have a much closer link. Dog in French is chien, and in Italian, it is cane. Also, the Ursa Major is a constellation in the northern sky. Ursa Major literally means the greater bear in Latin. That is exactly what it looks like. When we hear the word Ursa in English, we may not think of a bear, but in other Romantic languages you might. For example, bear in French is orse, and in Italian it is orsa, and in Spanish it is oso. So we can see how even names of planets and constellations have lasted for so long and are still in use today. We rely on the ancient Greek and Romans for not only the scientific part of it, but also the astronomical names that have been in use for so long. Zodiac signs also have deep roots in Greek and Roman mythology, and all the names of zodiac signs come from Latin, and you can see that here. All the names of these zodiac signs have ancient mythological references. For example, every time we use the word Aquarius, we are keeping alive and referencing the story that happened millennia ago of Ganymede, a mortal so beautiful that he was abducted by the gods to serve as their water bearer and was placed among the stars after he died. Also, every time we use the word Taurus, we are keeping alive and referencing the story in which Zeus changed himself into a beautiful white bull in order to win the affection of the Phoenician princess Europa. As you can see, many of us don't even know the history of all the words we are using and the references that we make. We see Latin everywhere, yet we don't realize that even when we are solely speaking our own language, we are keeping alive these words and engaging with this ancient society, their language, and their stories. As a result, I think we should all reevaluate what we consider to be a dead language, because although Latin and Greek are no longer fluently spoken, the contribution they have made and the impact that they have to our society is immense and can't be disregarded. So, are they really dead languages, or are they more just disguised in our lives and we don't know it? And so, understanding the context of the words we use helps us to obtain a deeper meaning in them, highlighting a core reason why everyone should get the opportunity to learn Latin and Greek, languages that are disguised yet extremely prevalent in our lives today, lives that would not be how we know them to be without this language's lasting impact.